bit of Jim Does SuperCoach. NFL Supercoach Week 14 is in the bag. That's right, we're going to wrap up Week 14. We're going to look ahead to Week 15. And as expected, SHEDEUR had 68. Yeah, no one predicted that. That was pretty good. Our top scorer once again, of course, Josh Allen. That's what happens. Hey, better week for me this week with the NFL Supercoach. Used a bit of loopage to maximize my score. I'll get to that in a second. Ended up with 591 for the week, which landed me, I think, 185th for Week 14, but moved me up to 38th overall, up from 79th. So nice little movement upwards. That's good, obviously. That also tells me that a lot of the folks at the pointy end of the NFL Supercoach rankings obviously weren't able to maybe loop SHEDEUR or had gone with someone like Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, one of those QBs that actually had a bit of a down week. So in terms of the overall rankings, etc., and scoring trends, the comp average was 397. So that just sort of tells you that the average, that bottom 50%, there's not too many people still really sticking with it. The top 10%, however, is at 550. So the people who are still playing are still doing really, really well because the top 5% average is only 569. It's only a bit of a jump up there. With the 591, obviously that's the top 1% for the week. You take that, that's pretty bloody good. But obviously, with that entire top 10% bunch so together, we are heading into, this is going to be like playoff time, but most importantly, it's pod time. Points of difference, that's right, it's pods. We need pods, give us the pods. Jim, what are the pods? We're going to talk about some pods in a second. So my trades this week, I didn't end up doing the one that I was talking about in the team reveal on Friday. I'd sort of thrown back and forth whether or not we trade out Drake May for Jalen Hurts. And I was able to basically sit Drake May on field on his bye, let SHEDEUR play with the 5 a.m. Monday game, see how he went before I had to make a decision. And obviously SHEDEUR ripped off a 68, so I let him have his score go in for Drake May, save myself a trade, and just as well, because Jalen Hurts scored a whopping 8. Brutal gear. So refrained from the trade, pretty happy with that, didn't burn one. In terms of injuries and whatnot from this week, T. Higgins is an interesting one to keep an eye on with the concussion. Rome Odunze out with a stress fracture in his foot. Justin Herbert was, a touch and go all week whether or not he was going to play on Monday Night Football. He did, just as well. They didn't do a giant man in the air against the Eagles, so it didn't really matter. But in terms of the biggest scorers this week, what happened, Jim? What happened? Well, Josh Allen went off again. Josh Allen just be doing Josh Allen things, right? 75 he had against the Bengals. That 40-yard run for the touchdown was absolutely immense. SHEDEUR Sanders was 68. That was awesome. Especially, look, I think the weird thing is, I talked about this last week, right? He might throw for a couple of touchdowns. He might run one in. That's exactly what happened. I'm just as afraid as you. Don't worry. But that was pretty cool. He did way better than I could have ever expected. Jahmyr Gibbs at 66. Puka Nacua 64. Michael Wilson, 63. Tony Pollard at 56. Out of nowhere for Big Tone. Interestingly, Joe Burrow, who's going to pop up again later, 50. Blake Corum, again, going to talk about him again in a second, 50. JSN with 49 and T. Higgins 48. Sort of rounding out that one, Stafford with 46, a really good week for him. Cam Dicker, the kicker. The kicker position is just so tough to pick, isn't it? He had 46. Brandon Aubrey had 46. They outscored Sam Darnold. Sure. Go figure. Anyway, the biggest surprises there, obviously in the top, 20-odd scorers, SHEDEUR Sanders 68 was pretty crazy. Good on him. They were playing Tennessee, and the Titans' defense isn't great, so good on him. Wilson getting to 63, a pretty good surprise if you jumped on a couple of weeks ago like we talked about. Tony Pollard, 56 as well. Against the Browns' defense, when he ripped off that massive run through the guts, in the snow, in the cold, on for young and old at that point, and he was really, really good. Blake Corum's 50, obviously a bit of a surprise as well, in that timeshare with Kyron Williams. Outside of that, Ryan Flournoy, basically when George Pickens is going off his head and just sort of stopping running, Florno pops up for 44 for the Cowboys last week, which is pretty neat. Harold Fannin Jr. had 42 as well. Some nice surprises in there. But the big one for me is like the biggest flops. Who didn't do much for us, Jim? Who didn't? Well, if you're one of the 13% of super coaches who still have Travis Kelce, yeah, that was a rough one. 2 points. Darren Waller, 11% owned. He had 3 points. So after being a massive, massive cash cow, I cashed out basically at the peak of his market. Pretty happy with that. 3 points this week as basically what the Dolphins are doing and not letting Tua hurt them. It's like, but he's your QB. It's like, yes, but we're not going to let him hurt us. Good stuff there. Tyler Warren. Obviously, everyone's beloved Tyler Warren. He is still on basically 50% of teams. He had 5. And the big injury that I didn't hit on at the top was that Indiana Jones, Daniel Jones is now out for the season with Achilles. Their backup QB, Riley Leonard, also doubtful with a knee injury. They're bringing in possibly, quite literally, grandfather. Seriously, he's a grandfather at this point. Phil Rivers. What a world. He retired in 2020. Absolute chaos. Anyway, so that's kind of fun. Not great if you're really relying on Tyler Warren, though. I'll tell you that much. Emeka Egbuka had 5 points as well in a tough game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen Hurts, owned by 8.7% of super coaches, managed 8 points. He had a million turnovers. What was it, 4 interceptions and a fumble? It was crazy. Brutal week for the Eagles. 9 for Ashton Genty. That Raiders team is a mess. 14 for Jamar Chase. 16 for Bijan Robinson. Mahomes, owned by 25% of coaches. He had managed 16 points, one of his worst games as a pro. George Pickens had 12. Rashee Rice had 10. Some pretty big flops in there. What about the cash cows, Jim? Who are we looking at this week for some cash? Well, it's week 14. We're getting pretty thin on the ground in terms of making any cash. There's a couple of names, though. SHEDEUR Sanders, Shedusy. He made us 4.2 mil already this week. Love that. And now he's got 68 in his cycle. He's going to keep making plenty of coin the next 2 weeks. Break even to minus 41. Name the starter for the rest of the season. If you don't have him, really good downgrade target. JJ McCarthy's solid out there as your backup as well. And really, obviously, if you've got Jackson Dart and you haven't traded him away, you're probably fine because Jackson Dart will probably still be very good. So SHEDEUR, though, is a good downgrade target if you've got anybody else. As a bench option, right? I wouldn't be starting him. I don't think you can get 68 from him each week. Blake Corum got a break even to minus 39, priced at 7.5 mil, so he'll make a fair amount of cash. He's a good downgrade target for one of those running backs. The Rams will probably try to balance out he and Kyron Williams the rest of the way. He broke off a big one this week, and Blake Corum, just doesn't feel wildly, oh yes, we need to make sure we get him in, but not a bad downgrade target. Jalen Wright, keep an eye on Devon A-Chain on the injury report this week for the Dolphins. If he misses any time, he could be a great downgrade spot. 4.6 mil for Jalen Wright. If A-Chain is out, break even to minus 2 after 33 last week. He is a good look. Only if A-Chain misses time. Tyler Shuck, he's got a break even to minus 14. He scored 44. Priced at 12.7 mil. He feels a little bit more reliable, maybe this SHEDEUR in terms of his scoring, but for an extra 3 and a bit mil, he's going to make less money than SHEDEUR anyway, so I don't know. RJ Harvey, he's at 12.3 mil. He's got a break even to minus 13. He'll go up another couple of mil as well, obviously. But the Broncos have a pretty tough matchup this week against Green Bay. And I think RJ Harvey's a really good bench option. I don't know if I'd be going out to get him right now. Tony Pollard, break even to minus 18 after his massive week, but at 9.1 mil. I don't know if we're sitting there going, geez, I should just hook my entire thing up to the Tony Pollard train because they play the Niners this week. Christian Watson's a much more interesting look. Minus 10 of a break even at 13 mil. Green Bay look like they're sort of just, now that they don't have Tucker Kraft, now that they're missing, Reed, Wicks, just a bunch of dudes. Watson is the dude. So I don't mind him at 13 mil. I'll talk about that again later. Michael Wilson crushing it without Marvin Harrison Jr. Every time Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't play, Wilson crushes. He's up to 14.6 mil, another 63 this week. He's going to make another 3-4 mil in the next couple of weeks because of that. And Harold Fannin Jr., 9.4 mil, break even to minus 12. Don't mind him either as a bit of a side swap if you don't trust the Tyler Warren experience and you've got trades to burn. I don't mind just keeping Warren there. it's just a fine bench spot for me because I've got McBride, I've got Bowers. I trust them. Warren, he's okay. I don't need to burn a trade, I think, from that. And if you don't want to either, who am I to argue? But Jim, tell us about some pods. Give us a couple of James Podsiadleys. Joe Burrow came back. He had a bit of a warm-up, it felt like last week. It was really good this week. 50. He's owned by 2.7% of coaches. He's at 22 million, though. So because he had that 50, it really just made sure that his price didn't drop crazily. But I think that the way the Bengals are going to be playing the rest of this season, they're still not technically eliminated. They will try to keep winning out. They will try to basically make sure that they keep some jobs in Cincinnati, all right? It'll be the coaching staff. It'll be the offensive coaching staff especially going, we're trying to justify why we're paying all this money to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and keeping Chase Brown around. So keep an eye on Joe Burrow if you're interested. Like the price range that he's at 22 mil, he's probably the best option. And as a big POD, 2.7% owned. That's awesome. So I don't mind that. A couple of interesting ones. Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr. on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've been playing really, really well. And the Jags have got a Jets team this week that have been better. But, I mean, no one owns Jacoby. He's at 1.8. Brian Thomas Jr. is still under 10% as well. Michael Wilson, I just talked about him at 14 mil. Still not a massive ownership spot for him. He is owned, let's see, by how many now? I think it has gone, it's gone up to 2.1%. So if we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. in and out, I don't mind that. Christian Watson, still love him, 13 mil. He has been so good. He is owned by 1.3%. He might be the one that I switch over from Roman Dunze or Justin Jefferson. I'm just going to talk that out in a second. Jalen Waddle, 12.1 mil. He's at 4.4% owned. He's an interesting pod, but with Tua basically kind of being put over here as they try to run the ball, and then run the ball some more and go, Tua, just, if you don't throw it, you can't hurt us. This is great. So it sort of really puts a bit of a lid on Waddle's upside, I feel. McConkey, he's owned by 7.9%. I do love me some Lad McConkey, but with Justin Herbert with having no O-line and a broken hand, I expected to see a little bit maybe against the Eagles this week. There wasn't much there. I could probably wait another week on Lad McConkey just to see what happens. Blake Corum, as I mentioned, 7.5 mil for him versus 15.4 mil. Literally half the price of Kyron Williams. Not a bad downgrade target if they start using him. They don't mind using him in red zone packages anyway. So Blake Corum, interesting downgrade pod as well, to the point where, he might not be your fourth running back, but he's not a bad bench option that you can, start in a pinch if you're feeling it. T. Higgins is another good pod. Now that Burrow's back, he's at 16.6 mil, right? Our man T. Higgins. He's very, very, very good. And he's only owned by 2.2%. The big problem is the concussion protocol after they sort of retroactively went, wait a minute, the dude who's had concussions kept banging his head into the icy ground. We should check up on that. So, I don't know. Keep an eye on him. Jacoby Brissett is another QB pod, owned by 2.5%. They're just going to keep throwing it. The Cardinals got nothing to play for. Their coach might get fired. Jacoby's just going to keep slinging it. And two more. Devontae Adams, 6.1% ownership. All he does is catch touchdown passes. The upside, is fairly high because he can catch 2 touchdowns. He can catch 3. He's not going to do a giant amount of yardage. So I guess his upside is pretty high, but his ceiling isn't massive. I don't know. It's a bit of an odd one, but I do like him. Not a bad pod. To the point where you can probably start him and Puka Nacua together almost. And the Seahawks defense, only owned by 4.5% of coaches. They are very expensive, but they have got a great run down the stretch. They got Indy this week specifically. So some good pods in there, I reckon. In terms of the players that we're looking for in pods, I mean, it's probably owned by less than, 9%, 10% of coaches. Because when you got a shared player universe, we all get very tempted to just go get the big names. But the way you might win matchups in your leagues or keep rising up the ranks is by having one or two of those pods, using loops effectively as well. So I looped Jahmyr Gibbs' 66 this week instead of going with Josh Allen as the captain because it's 66. we see this all the time in AFL Supercoach. Take the big score when it's there. Basically, you should have a baseline of like, all right, cool. If I've got my VC, I've got my loop. Your baseline, I think, you take anything over 50, obviously, I think, in NFL Supercoach. So that's okay. It was fine by me. Just saying. But the rest of your pods, I mean, there's a couple of interesting other names out there in terms of like the Watsons, the Fannin Juniors, other QBs like Dak Prescott, 3.5%. He's been absolutely fantastic. Literally since I got him out of my team for Drake May. He's gone off his head because of course he has. DK Metcalf, owned by 8.3%. He had a pretty good week this week. I just don't know if we can trust that each week out there too. And Jalen Wright, like if Achane misses any time, as I mentioned, ultimate POD, 0.4% of coaches own him. He's in 145 total teams. They got a Pittsburgh team this week. If Achane doesn't play, just saying, keep an eye out. Josh Jacobs, only owned by 7.9% as well. Right, so trades. What trades are we looking at this week? Buys are done. So one little piece of strategy, I guess, is like someone like Roma Dunze or another injured player that you might still have on your bench. It's not a bad idea to keep them while buys are done, skis now, to the point where you can have the floating donut that you can loop a vice captaincy and like take their score by looping, by putting that player who's injured and not going to score on field, putting them as the captain, right? That's the loop that we would use in NRL, AFL, NBA Supercoach, not so much obviously, but so the floating donut, I'm okay with it, but wide receiver 6 is still a bit of a iffy one for me. Like I've got Tet McMillan, Justin Jefferson. Tet McMillan's been fantastic. He's got a pretty interesting matchup against the Saints this week, so I might not have to make a move. But this is also the thing where you go, or could I start shopping for a pod now, use one of my remaining 4 trades, and get maybe Brian Thomas Jr. in. He's owned by 3.7%. He's down to 9.7 million as well, so that's almost a straight swap from Justin Jefferson. Or do we just have a look, see one more time at Justin Jefferson this week as he plays against a Dallas defense that has been better, but also got kind of carved up by Detroit last week. I'm just saying Justin Jefferson might be okay. Tet might be all right against New Orleans. The pods, though, that we've got there, obviously in Brian Thomas Jr. and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby's a little bit more expensive, 11.6. Jefferson versus Brian Thomas Jr. Like, I can't believe we're having this discussion that Justin Jefferson's 8.4 mil and Brian Thomas Jr. is 9.7 mil at this point. What a world. Like, these are 2 first round, second round draft picks in any fantasy draft, and here we are. Jacoby Myers, 1.8% owned, another pretty good pod. With Jacksonville playing the Jets this week, though, Jets haven't been too bad the last 3 weeks, but I don't know. Rashee Rice is the other one. With KC needing to win out, they play a Chargers team that's pretty good defensively. But, I mean, Rashee Rice had a pretty quiet week. You expect a pretty big bounce back, I guess, from Mahomes and the Chiefs this week too. Rice, I expect to be pretty good. But I don't mind Tet McMillan's matchup against the Saints, so I'll probably put him in my wide receiver 6 this week and maybe just pump the brakes, not burn another trade just in case. But, I mean, I am ranked, 38th. So it is kind of like, all right, if you really want to have a crack, find that pod, see how you go. Tet McMillan, though, might go whack against the Saints. So we'll see how we go. The big one, obviously, is always playing the schedule. So looking at your trades, who are you actually going to want to avoid? Who do you want to maybe bring in? Bijan and Bucky Irving in that Tampa Bay Atlanta game is pretty fun. I think Bijan might be my VC this week. Bucky Irving's been really good. You got Philly versus the Raiders. Love that for Jalen Hurts. Big bounce back game, I reckon, for him. Saquon as well. Cincy versus Baltimore. Love this for both sides. The Cincy defense is still a bit of a mess, but Chase and Higgins, Chase Brown for the Bengals, they should all go off. Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Lamar, Joe Burrow. I think most of them look pretty good. If you've got Lamar this week, you're feeling okay. Maybe. He just hasn't looked that good, but against Cincy, we'll see what happens there. Jags versus the Jets. Jacoby, Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., as I mentioned. BTJ, like 3 weeks after coming back from his injury. Let's see what happens there. The Giants versus Washington. Wan'Dale Robinson. Whichever of their running backs they're going to run with this week, who do you reckon that could be? Jeez. Singletary? I don't know. It's a bit of a mess there for the Giants, but Washington are horrible, so don't mind them. If you've got Dart, keep an eye on him. Rams versus Detroit. I don't mind this actually for both sides. You might go, but Jim, they've got fairly decent defenses. They do. But I think both their offenses can probably, between Amon-Ra, Gibbs, even J-Mo, for the Lions versus for the Rams, Puka and Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, Stafford, they all should do pretty well. Pats Buffalo. You've got Allen versus May. It's pretty funny because I've got them both as my QBs. I don't mind both the QBs. Diggs perhaps as one of the wide receivers. James Cook, Henderson, not so much about the running. We know the Pats' run defense has been really good all season. But I do like the QBs. Love Seattle versus Indy. I don't really like it for Indy, but they will lean on Jonathan Taylor. So the Seattle defense is pretty tough though. So I probably wouldn't look at him as a captain, but JSN and the Seattle defense I do love because the Seattle defense is crushing it. We've got a Colts team that doesn't know who their QB is going to be, so good luck with that. Dallas, Minnesota, not convinced about either side, but I do like Pickens more than CD this week. I think he bounces back. Jefferson, look, if it's not going to happen against the Dallas secondary, when's it going to ever happen? Pittsburgh versus Miami, look at both sides of the running backs, Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, and then obviously Achane. Just we need to know what's going on with his injuries, but if not, Jalen Wright, great downgrade. The games to avoid this week, Chicago versus Cleveland. So Rome Odunze being out. The Bears wide receivers did very little this week against Green Bay. So DJ Moore, maybe in 2 weeks' time, I'll keep an eye on him. Arizona versus Houston. Wilson. That'd give me pause because he's going against this really good Texans defense this week. So maybe, like as a pod, Michael Wilson is good. Still going to make good coin. But he could have a rough week this week, I'm saying. The Chiefs-Chargers game, like the Chargers and KC wide receivers, I just, like that's the Rashee Rice moment where you're like, just don't know. Same with Ladd McConkey. Like I'd like to have them in my team, but I just don't know if I trust him this week. And Denver, Green Bay, both sides. I mentioned RJ Harvey. He's been really good. Still going to make a bit of cash, but I don't like the matchup against Green Bay. Josh Jacobs against the Denver run defense as well. Christian Watson, that's the one thing where I feel like Watson coming in for someone like Jefferson or Dunze on my team, I'd feel good about that if he wasn't playing against Denver, where they can sort of just key on in him a little bit, and I'm just like a little bit. I think if we had really good matchups this week, I'd be much more gung-ho about my trades, but maybe that's a bit more we can look at for week 16. But hopefully I've got enough in the tank to win my leagues if I don't use any trades, but I don't know. I think I might be okay with Tet as my wide receiver 6. Trade-in candidates this week. Bucky Irving, he had 30 this week. He's up to 17.6 mil. I do love his game against Atlanta as well. Bijan is all the way down to 19.9 mil after a 16. He is really just, he got a lot of work this week, but Atlanta just sucked. So Bijan literally had the 16 against Seattle, but he had 55 the week prior. Don't forget against the Jets. So just saying, don't mind Bijan still. Jamar Chase, if you've traded him out, he's back down to 15 mil. He's got a good matchup, I reckon, against Baltimore this week, just because Joe Burrow is just going to start keying in on him, especially if Higgins is out or limited. Anyone on the Eagles against the Raiders, like if you've got AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, Saquon, you should feel pretty good about that this week. They're also good ones to look at for your trading candidates. I think in terms of the actual trades that have been made, the folks that are getting traded in at the moment, it is the likes of Puka Nacua, it is Josh Allen, Brock Bowers, the big names, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now up to like 29 mil. The trade out ones are obviously like Drake London still under the injury cloud. If you've got him sitting there, you can probably move on. Mahomes is being traded out by some folks. I don't know about that so much. Genty gots to go. Adunze, unless you want to keep him as a floating donut, I think you can maybe move on from him. Look limited, stress fracture in his foot. Do not like that at all. And Tyler Warren, if you want to side swap to a different tight end backup, just saying, have at it. So my trades, look, ranked 38th. I'm very tempted just to throw caution to the wind, burn a couple of trades, but in terms of the upgrade options this week, I don't really like too many of them. Like even Amon-Ra against the Rams, I'm kind of like, it's fine. But yeah, so I might just keep the powder dry. We'll reveal that all on Friday's team reveal. So keep an eye out for that video dropping Friday morning. But so I think for the minute though, no trades. Keep the 4 left. See how we go from here. Captains this week. I like Bijan with the VC against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, we saw them last week get carved up by the Saints, which is a bit weird. Josh Allen, probably my C versus New England. just because I think at home the Pats will be good, but Josh Allen is on an absolute tear, and this could be like his MVP run again. Christian McCaffrey against the Titans is another great one. JSN versus Indy is a good one too. And even if you've got Jalen Hurts against the Raiders, I wouldn't mind throwing a bit of a C on him. So, yeah, plenty to look out for there. But that's it. Week 14 of the NFL is in the bag. So NFL Supercoach is getting to its playoff time. So make sure you've got all of your lineups optimized. Make sure you're on top of your stuff. Use your trades wisely. We do have, I've still got 4 left. I feel pretty okay about that, just in case of any other injuries, to take care of like any of my big names. So I'm all right for the minute. We'll see how we go if I talk myself into a trade later this week. So keep an eye out for the team reveal on Friday. So check us out across all the socials, of course, Facey, Twitter, IG, TikTok, YouTube. Jump in the comments, send through any comments, any questions you want us to have a look at. Get around NBA Straya and NFL Straya, of course. All the good stuff there. All right, this has been Jim Does SuperCoach. Here's to a big week 15. Happy super coaching.